wearing CBD, maybe you're not. But on today's show, we're going to talk about what would be good and bad and how you can get the good out of it. Let's do it. Salon owners are some of the most amazing people on planet Earth. The only problem is sometimes their hearts are so big and they give so much of themselves to their staff and guests that it creates unintended consequences. Our goal is to change the industry by elevating the way the rest of the world sees salons, spas, and barbershops and give it the credibility that it truly deserves. This is the Salon Owner Evo Revo Show. Today's podcast is brought to you by Salon Scale, allowing you to charge by what you know, not by what you feel. Welcome to today's show. My name is Jason Everett, and with me is my partner in crime, Mr. Doug Campbell. What's going on? And speaking of crime, today's show is all about selling drugs, right? That's what we're going to talk about today. But look, does your salon sell CBD products? Does it? Do me a favor and sell CBD. If you don't sell CBD, say not yet. That's totally okay. Or not ever. That's totally fine as well. And I'm kind of joking about this like selling drugs idea because I think people think that, that if you had CBD oil that you might be selling drugs. And I want to talk about the myths. I want to talk about the good things, the bad things, what's going on in the industry and what you need to be aware of all on today's show. So does that sound like a plan, Doug? Feel good? Feel good?
It sounds like a good plan. Yeah, because there are a lot of things that people are confused about. So we got an expert on today that's going to give us a ton of clarity of what we're looking at, what we can do. And one, I think what you get out today is if you're going to bring CBD in, do it for the right reasons and not just because people are doing it, but do it for the right reasons, for the right results. So super excited about our guest today. I think she's going to bring a lot of
Totally. And by the way, we actually met this gal out at the ABS show out in Chicago. She had some great insights. She was doing some incredible classes on kind of the myths around CBD and like if products really have CBD in it and what's going on. But she's the founder of Primal Healing. Please welcome to the show, Jordan Person. What's up, Jordan? Glad to have you on.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here today.
Yeah. And by the way, we met one night and you just totally blew me away with a story about how CBD literally saved your life and kind of how it became your mission to share it with the world. So before we dive into, some of the ramifications of what's going on inside of CBD in general in the industry, do you mind giving us a little bit about this story, like how CBD really impacted you? Can you tell us that story and what caused you to create Primal Healing?
Absolutely. So in 2010, I got really sick. And it was at the point where I was on 13 different pharmaceuticals and I just kept getting sicker. And so the only thing that really made me feel better was when I consumed cannabis. And so the nurse in me, I've been a nurse for 20 years now, I didn't really understand why this one plant that was so insanely illegal helped my health as much as it did. And so in Colorado, where I now am, I relocated as a medical cannabis refugee. And I really began
like you literally moved to Colorado for that specifically.
Yes, I went 2,000 miles away from everything that I knew and loved. I left my family, I left my vehicle, I left my dog. I left everything because I was dying. And it was like, I either wanted to die with access to a plant that made me feel somewhat human, or I would just rather die away from everyone I knew. And so I got my medical cannabis card within 48 hours of relocating, and I began consuming cannabis in all of its forms. CBD wasn't the big thing on the scene quite yet. THC was still the primary cannabinoid that people were discussing. This is back in 2010. But I noticed almost immediately that these products that contained high amounts of cannabis were doing for me what the prescriptions were supposed to. And I had never felt better, even though I was sick and dying. And so I ended up having 6 major surgeries back to back, including a liver resection, a total abdominal hysterectomy where they made an error when closing me. They put me into renal failure. I wore a nephrostomy tube on my right side until they could go in and do the repair to my bladder and move it up and over. I went through a lot. My body would reject what they would do to me, and then they would have the secondary issue to fix that. There was one
Dang.
year where I was on antibiotics, something crazy like 240 out of 365 days. Um,
Yikes.
but it was all a huge lesson, right? Because I was able to see plant medicine and plant allies for what they were. And I was able to no longer have the clouded judgment that I once had in regards to ingredients that come from plants, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it really changed my eyes. And I began doing cannabis massage about 8 years ago. And it was really just, my body was not ready to completely go back to work as a nurse or as a massage therapist. And it was just kind of like a research experiment. I just wondered what would happen if you applied cannabis from head to toe.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, there was no one to ask. And again, CBD was still not the rage. THC was still the primary cannabinoid that people were used to and comfortable with talking about. And so it wasn't until probably 2017 that I began using high amounts of CBD as well. And not just in my life, but in my animals' lives and in my topicals and in my ingestibles, and just really trying to consume this other cannabinoid in as many different ways as I possibly could, putting it in my tea or putting it in my bathtub, and just trying to absorb it for what it was and get its medicinal aspects. So
Interesting.
I think it's a
So
long-winded answer, but
no,
definitely how we got.
it's really interesting to know. And Doug, I don't know, you and I had both kind of heard that story, and it was really interesting just to know, like, we've kind of, I mean, I come from a generation of like drugs are bad. I'm a dare kid, which is like, keep kids off of drugs. All drugs are bad. And so it was this giant campaign to prevent people from ever doing anything bad ever, right? And I think what's really fascinating is to your point, Jordan, like we've gone from the society of like, why, this is bad, to like, well, wait a second, now it's legal in certain states, and now it's continuing to gain momentum, and now CBD is becoming more commonplace. Like here in California, it's a lot more commonplace. And sure, there's people who can consume cannabis in different forms, but with CBD oil specifically, there's some interesting things. And what got my attention about your story is I had gone, kind of in a different vein. I didn't have any like major health catastrophe thing that I was dealing with, but I had gone, in true Jason fashion, I was heliboarding up in Canada, and I was going heliboarding for a couple days in a row. And at the place we came back, we were dead. Like our legs were toast for the day. And we got back in our rooms, and they actually had a recovery product that was like a spray. And they said, hey, spray that on your legs tomorrow morning. It'll be a whole different day. So I sprayed it on my legs, and thought that like I wouldn't even be able to walk the next day. And literally got up the next day and felt completely amazing. Like I hadn't been snowboarding the day before. Like I had just all the recovery instantaneously from the spray. Come to find out later, it was a CBD spray. And I was like, this is nuts. Like I didn't know at the time. I don't know whether I would have used it or not knowing that, but I didn't know, used it. It worked extremely well. And all of a sudden, like my little like receptors of like, okay, maybe like this isn't a drug. It's not like I had to smoke some weed before I went and snowboarded, which would be more appropriate half the time, right? But it was just I sprayed this on and said, this is interesting. So now as we go into the world of salons and spas, and now it's starting to become a lot more commonplace, I think there's some myths around it. I think there's some misconceptions. And there's also some real life challenges, depending on what state you're in and what's going on and how you bank with it. Like there still are quite a few things to navigate. And again, if you guys are just as confused as most people are about CBD, do me a favor, type in the chat, say confused, because I think it can be a very confusing topic. But Jordan, you've got some really good advice on this. You mentioned CBD massages. Can we talk about that as a topical application for CBD? Like, how does that actually function? Like, it's part of, you use the oil in a massage, like that's part of, somebody can book a CBD massage?
Absolutely. So we've been doing CBD massage, cannabis massage here in Colorado for almost 8 years. I have students, I've taught it as a modality around the world. So I have students nationwide that are performing the modality as well. But basically the topical application of cannabinoids, our bodies are covered in and full of receptors that are waiting to be activated in regards to phytocannabinoids. Phyto meaning plant-based cannabinoids. And so It's kind of a dual activation that takes place. Science has
Hmm.
proven that when we receive massage therapy, we release our own internal endocannabinoid called anandamide.
Mm.
Ananda in Sanskrit translates to the word bliss. And so we have the bliss uh, molecule, if you will, that we are releasing from receiving massage, combined with the topical use of cannabinoids or phytocannabinoids. You also have cutaneous homeostasis. So you're able to have a dual homeostasis effect, both cutaneous and internal. So cannabis massage is incredibly effective for a very long growing list of ailments. And basically, in 100% of the cases we have seen here in Colorado, we have been able to provide some sort of relief to those patients.
That's huge. That's huge. Huge. Huge, huge, huge. Doug, talk to me about what are some of the concerns bringing this in as a salon owner, and actually having this inside the salon. What are some of the things that you would be concerned about or paying attention to that you've heard about or you know, especially in working with our salons in the academy?
Well, one, I think people need to bring it in for the right reasons. Like I said, not just because it's popular or
Right.
I heard it was cool, yeah, but understanding exactly what Jordan was just saying, understanding the why behind it, how it works, so that people can actually be educated on why they're using it. The other one that Jordan had mentioned is you got to be careful with your processors that can cause your credit card processors that could cause some problems. So, if Jordan, you want to talk a little bit about that, would
Yeah,
love to.
let's actually do this. I want to talk about the credit card processors, but we also need to take a short break. So let's do this. Let's talk about how do you actually bring in products? What are some of the challenges you might, if this is an interesting topic and you want to bring it in, let's do that. But after the short break, we'll be right back.
Hey, HPSA listeners, let me ask you this. Are you tired of not knowing what your hair color is costing you on every appointment and watching it chew up your profit? Well, with Salon Scale, we take the guesswork out for you. Using a mobile app paired with a Bluetooth scale, Salon Scale will tell you exactly what your color is costing you on every bowl mix down to the gram. As you mix, Salon Scale will also digitally store your formulas and track how much product is being used in real time, so you can manage your inventory, cover your expenses, and generate more profit in your salon. Use promo code HPSA10 to get 10% off an annual subscription. Salon Scale, the new standard for mixing color.
We're talking with Jordan Person from Primal Healing, and we're talking about what would you need to do in order to bring CBD into your salon, into your spa, maybe even use CBD massage as a modality to bring into your spa. Jordan, you were saying there's two other things we need to really cover on this podcast I think are really helpful. One is kind of like, well, how do you even know that what you're getting is CBD? Because that's kind of like a buzz term right now. It's like maybe it's hemp seed oil or it's whatever. And everybody just goes, well, I'm pretty sure that's the stuff everybody wants. So let's get that. And then we also need to talk about, I know I didn't mean to trigger you there. And then we also need to talk about how it actually works, the credit card processors and people, what you need to say. So let's start with products. Obviously, they can go check you guys out at Primal Healing. You guys have some things that you can share. But what are some of the things, Jordan, that people need to be aware of when looking for products to bring into their salon or spa?
So, great question. First and foremost, I want to make the very clear distinction between hemp seed oil and products that contain actually cannabidiol or CBD. So hemp seed oil actually contains 0 cannabinoids or 0 amount of CBD. And there are a lot of very well-known brands. We saw them at IECSC and ABS in Chicago. I'm sure this weekend I'm headed to Florida. I'm sure I'm going to see it all over again. Huge, big pot leaves on their signs so that it draws people in on the showroom floor. And then when you read the product, the only thing it contains is hemp seed oil. And so there are a lot of very well-known brands that are now adding one ingredient to bring you in and to make you feel comfortable and to help you ride the fad wave. But what I want people to understand is that this ingredient is not a fad. It's a powerhouse. There is limitless potential. And right now, we are in what I like to call the epicenter of what will be known as one of the most important points in history, where we are learning all about what these 500 components in the cannabis plant are capable of.
Mm.
And so there are other cannabinoids, not just CBD, there's CBG, CBN, that don't necessarily provide a psychoactive or a psychogenic effect, however, have incredible healing potentials
That's
for
awesome.
various issues with the hair, skin, nails. So
Nice.
I think it's important for people to realize that, like I said, this is not a fad ingredient. We're only going to continue to learn more about various cannabinoids that are going to continue to innovate and innovate
Yeah.
our product lines, right?
Nice.
So just be careful when you're looking for products. One of the big things that's different in hemp-based products in this industry is that they should come with a COA, or a certificate of analysis. And so a lot of products don't have one of those. And so we don't really know what the potency is, or if they're free of heavy metals and other ingredients that are used in the processing of cannabis or hemp. And so why is that important? Because these product lines are going on our largest organ, which is our skin.
Yeah.
And so it's important for us to know these things, but it's different because there's never been an ingredient or a product in this industry where we had to pay attention to things like that before. It never mattered if we had a certificate of analysis to know if our product was deemed clean. We've just assumed so because it came in a pretty shiny box. And so this addition of this ingredient is changing the way that we look at the beauty industry as a whole, because it's making us wonder, well, what other ingredients do we need to wonder if they're in there?
Totally, completely. And, Doug, you had brought this up, talking about the rest of this. So hemp seed oil, not really CBD, just to give some clarity. Just because there's a pot leaf on a product does not make sure that it guarantees you anything. So look for, what are they specifically looking for? The certificate, or what other verbiage are they looking for on whatever the product is?
So a lot of companies, they'll put like a QR code directly on their label so that it will allow them to go right back to their website and show where those testing things are. It should say CBD or hemp CBD. There's a lot of other terminology that's
So
happening
CBD
in
specifically, though, would be helpful.
CBD. You're going to see the words like broad spectrum or full spectrum. You'll also see like CBD isolate. Those are all terms associated to if there are other cannabinoids or other ingredients present. And so I'm going to throw this out there because this is so important for your listeners. So the term isolate means singular compound, means isolated compound. So if you see CBD isolate, it's going to just be CBD. There's not any other, there's no THC, there's no chlorophyll, there's no flavonoids. It's just simply CBD isolate. Now, you also will see the terminology broad spectrum and full spectrum. Broad spectrum means all of the good stuff with the exception of THC. And full spectrum means all of the good stuff, including the legal limit of THC. So if you are out and about and you are shopping for a product and someone tells you that they have full spectrum isolate, you know what to do now, right? You run away.
I'm getting more educated.
You run away because that's not possible scientifically. You can't have an isolated full spectrum. And so scary. That's what you hear all the time in sales pitches for these products right now. So it's all about education, knowing your terminology, understanding what these words mean, so that when you go out and you're trying to put some of these awesome products in your salons and spas, just make sure you know your sourcing. Where is the CBD portion coming from? Is it from the United States? Is it from overseas? And if that's not something that matters to you completely, then it doesn't matter to you. But it's just great to know and to wonder about before you make an investment.
I love it. And I know we're kind of running out of time. I want to get this last piece in. Are there other issues with having a CBD specific product in the salon as far as charging for it? I mean, I know I have friends who are involved in aspects of this business, even here in California, because it's more legal as you go to different areas. And one of the biggest issues, I got several friends that banking becomes an issue, right? Because federally there's issues, but locally there's not. And so it creates a large banking issue. How does this play out in a salon environment? How, like, can your credit card processor say, sorry, I'm not taking this money? Can your bank be upset about, like, how do you work around this? Are there kind of conversations to have and not have? Can you help me answer that a little bit?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, larger payment processors such as Square or PayPal or Stripe, they do not like cannabis businesses or even hemp-based businesses. And so in 2018, in a 3-month time span, I lost every major credit card processor that my business had. And I was selling massages,
right, especially
and
if
education.
It was just your same
It wasn't even topicals yet. So it was a huge eye-opener into what you can say online and what you can't, and what hurdles we all have to get through. And so the first and foremost is hemp is the only thing that's been legally approved thanks to the 2018 Farm Bill. What the 2018 Farm Bill did was define hemp as cannabis that contains less than 0.3% THC. So hemp is basically legal in all 50 states. And so you can refer to hemp, and that's about the only word that's going to keep you safe. You can't use the word CBD, that's considered a hot word. You can't use the word cannabis. There's a lot of businesses right now that if they choose to put hemp SD or CBD SD in their actual name of their business, there's a lot of people that are currently creating DBAs, doing business as, they can still run their credit card processor, but doing so under a name that is not cannabis or CBD related.
Wow. Yeah. So it was super important to know. Because I mean, if you just said, great, now carrying CBD, and you slap that on your website and you say CBD massages and all that stuff, you run the risk of losing your credit card processor, people. Like, that's an important detail to be aware of.
It really is. And so when you create your spa menu, not putting CBD massage in the actual menu. So even if it is CBD massage, you're not putting that as what you're charging. And then the other great thing is there are processors now that are specific to CBD. Square has even created a CBD program, but I think you have to have like $250,000, a year in processing to even apply. So there's lots of different programs that are now happening, but banking is one of the largest issues as a whole that this industry continues to face. And as this industry continues to enter the spa industry and enter the medical field and just kind of get its way into all these other spaces, banking right now is more important than ever. So when you create your spa menu, don't use the exact word CBD, use the word infused or use the word hemp, but don't use words that are going to trigger you to be audited and then to lose your processing.
Totally got it. So real quick, Jordan, how can people get a hold of I know you have several products. You have oils, you have a couple of different products. You even have some chapstick. How can people track down some of the products that you have and learn more about you?
Absolutely. So you can go to primalhealing.com or you can go to jordanperson.com, JORDANPERSON.
Awesome. Doug, any final questions for Jordan before we let her go today from you?
No, I just appreciate her coming on and shining some light on that. The terminology thing, I think, is huge because it's a red flag if someone's and they're putting two terms together that don't belong together. I think that was super important. And then just understanding how to protect yourself with your credit card processor. Hopefully that stuff will get better. But the more we can educate people on this so that we can get the value of this product out there in the market, I think the better. So I really appreciate it, Jordan. Appreciate you coming on and sharing.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
as it just, again,
Thank
I think
you both for sharing knowledge.
Totally. And it's so early. I mean, Jordan, you've been around it for a lot of years, since before it was even more mainstream. It's becoming more mainstream. I imagine in the next 5 or 10 years, it's going to be more and more mainstream as we look into it and other people start to see some of the benefits from it. I think it's an outstanding resource to be aware of. And whether, CBD is something you want to explore now or you want to in the future, I think education is the key. So Jordan, thank you for taking the time today. Super grateful for you coming on, sharing your knowledge. I appreciate that you have the nursing background and you've been at it for years and years. So thanks for being on. on today. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you got lots of value, do me a favor and comment value in the show title. Hopefully, if any of you typed in CBD, we don't get shut down. I think we're gonna be okay though, because we were educating. Anyway, for educational purposes today, I hope you enjoyed the show. Have a great week. Thanks for being here, Jordan. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Evo Revo podcast. Today's podcast was brought to you by Salon Scale, allowing you to charge by what you know, not by what you feel. Please subscribe, leave us a review, and you can always get more information, including show notes and the video episodes at evorevopodcast.com.